Good morning, everyone. I'm Sarah from WIN, and I would like to welcome all of you today here at the 8th of March event. And so now I give my word to Kristin, our founder, in order to start the event. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. So nice to see you all, and happy International Women's Day. I think that there is much to celebrate, even if there are days we feel there is a lot of obstacles also. But still, we want to celebrate particularly the fact that all of you came right now, right here, and spending your time together with other women. And just glancing at the picture on the screen and also some of the names of those that I don't see, I know that we are calling in from many. There is Japan, there's all over Europe, and there is South America. So I'm very happy about all of these, and particularly those of you that wake up very early from other time zones or sitting in the evening, like those in or late afternoon in Japan. So this is really nice. So here we are, and we are here to look at a very important topic. So every year, for those of you that are new also to WIN, I mean, maybe there is some of you that are new. I sort of assume everybody knows a little bit about WIN, but we are existing since 1997 to advance women, and we are most known for a global leadership summit, which is the WIN conference, where we bring together women from all over the world and the men who want to be part of it to look at how would the world ideally look like if we had more harmonious opportunities together with the men, but also how would it look like if we could envision it from a woman's perspective. We also look at how the organizations would be and how our own very lives will be. So there's the world work you, and that is a model we have kept on all over the world, whether we go to Nigeria, Japan, India, Middle East, or at a global meeting in Europe. We keep that sort of advancing and this visioning of how it would ideally look like. So we are very much into seeing the possible and encouraging each and every one of us to both work on the obstacles inside of us, as well as what's going on outside with laws and with everything in society. But the inside is also important. And we like to look at all women today, all over the planet, as a kind of pioneers of new ways of working, living, and being, because we have been under patriarchy in all countries for so long, and to stake out new ways and new paths is really very courageous. So I think that's something we want to celebrate, that all of you are working on all of that, and I want to encourage everybody to continue. Also, we live in a world that is has a lot of conflicts, as we see. There is even conflicts in media about women and men. There are wars, there are many things going on. And I think never before have women been more important. And truly this authentic woman, the woman who stays in her natural power, who has a power from the inside and power with others. So not the old domination and control, but the more natural one. And I know so well that's possible. Over the years, WIN has been really created based on those values of collaboration, of sharing, and of caring. And I feel it's also under threat. This caring and sharing is under threat. Using our hearts is under threat. And it's not so easy, and all of you know that. So we are together to also inspiring us and to nurture each other to keep up our work, so we don't get exhausted and tired, but that we can keep it up, in the big and in the small, whether at home or in the workplace, and in a harmonious, peaceful way, not with aggression or manipulation. So that's the WIN way. And with that, I'd like to wish you so much welcome. What we'll do now, because we have short time, and I'd like all of you to have a chance to be a little bit interactive. So in 5 minutes, we're going to go into some small groups, or not in 5 minutes, in 1 minute, we're going to go into the small groups. And I'm just going to share with you. Let's see, I can share. Or Estella, do you have the slides? Any chance? Maybe I don't have it. Okay, I'll share it. Hold on. I just want to share one slide with you so you can see the agenda of today and the group's slides. So we are here today. Is a panel start at 9:45, and then we have these connections. But now we go into the small groups and really quickly share 3 or 4 people together, who you are, what you do, and something that inspires you. And if there's more time, look at women as an agent of change. But more than anything, these first breakout rooms, who you are, what you do, and something that inspires you. And please keep sharing the time. So if I say you have 6 minutes, then, and if you're 3 people, that's 2 minutes per person. And let's respect that today. And off we go. That's great. I hope you had some good conversations and all is good. So what we are talking about today is inspiring the future. That's sort of what we always do at WIN. But we are aligning ourselves with a UN message, which is that of investing in women, accelerating progress. There is study after study that shows that countries that invest in women, companies and organizations of all kinds that invest in women are doing better. So there is sort of no reason not to do this anymore, because both the facts or intuition or senses, everything knows that this is a good thing to do. And we're also here to find that power of the authentic woman that she has inside herself, the primordial power, as well as the possibility that resources can give us, which is both a value of each other's work and that of actual also money to be able to invest. So I have invited to be with me today Hélène Papper, Shiva Dustdar, Kanta Singh, and also Leah. And coming in from different countries and different continents even, it makes this global international Women's Day so particularly much of a treasure for me, and I believe for all of you here. So what I'd like to do is just to give a quick little mini introduction to who we have in front of you. I'll start with Hélène Papper, who has worked all over the world in humanitarian efforts in the most remote areas you can imagine she's been, and also now sitting in Rome at IFAD, where she's in charge of communication, working in agriculture, and making sure that the women agenda is in every little thing that she touches. And she's a trailblazer who's been working on the women cause for so many years, and I want to honor her for all her tireless work. And also with us today, we have Shiva Dustdar, who is in charge of the Institute at the European Investment Bank. And she also works for women tirelessly and been in many positions within the bank, worked in other banks, JP Morgan, all over. And I know also she, everywhere she goes, even if there are many men or women who don't believe in the cause, she believes, and she puts it in everywhere she goes. Then we have with us today Kanta. Are you there, Kanta? I don't see you anymore. But Kanta is here with us all the way from India on a very auspicious day in India. I know you're celebrating not only the Women's Day, but also one of your prime gods, and celebrations happening all over the country. But we are celebrating also Kanta today, many years at UNDP, then now at UN Women, where she's deputy head of the organization. And as we know, India is a large country, 1,400,000,000 people, and half of them or so are women. So it's an incredible, important job, and we know much is going on and much needs to be going on. So we will hear more from her. Leah, are you with us? Or did she fall out? Leah is based in Nairobi, has also a huge passion for women, many different jobs, and she realized it was so hard to get loans, so hard to get access to finances, that she decided to do something about it, namely starting a bank for women. So we want to hear here from the big institutions as well as the entrepreneurs who are on the cause, on the matter. So and I also want to introduce, I also acknowledge all of you in the room, such as Hans and all of you. I know you are also doing amazing things, and I'm sure everybody can be up here on the panel today. So we have, so I want to applaud all of you. So I want to start with Shiva. I mean, besides, if there's something you want to add in addition to what I said about who you are, perhaps tell me what is going on at the European Investment Bank, investment in entrepreneurs, and why you're so dedicated to this, please.
Thank you very much, Kristin. And indeed, what a great way of starting International Women's Day with you and this wonderful WIN community. I have to say the tagline of this year, investing in women, could not be more exciting for the European Investment Bank. So we are the Bank of the European Union. And as such, so owned by the 27 members of the Union, and also the EU Climate Bank. Over the last 20 years that I have been at the bank, we've gone through a major transformation. Now we are actually even headed for the first time in 65 years by a woman, President Calviño, Nadia Calviño, former Vice Prime Minister of Spain. The reason I mentioned that is because I was just really impressed when I looked at our numbers last year. 5.8 billion out of 88 billion of investments in 23 went to projects that had to 63 projects that supported gender equality, women empowerment all over the world and across many sectors. Of course, mobility, public transport, but also bioeconomy, also R&D projects on cancer diagnostics, really with a zoom on women, also breast cancer. So it was beautiful to see how the bank is using its financial firepower to really ensure that when it invest in projects, either they are to invest, as you said, into women entrepreneurs, and there, we do so either directly or through our financial intermediaries, or investing in let's say, large infrastructure projects where we make it very much as a condition to look at how these projects impact women in terms of their safety, their protection, or but also how they could empower women in having a greater role in the decision making. So this is something where I know we're not the only multilateral doing so, but having the public finance puts basically its money where its mouth is, I think it has a very important catalytic role, setting the standards and really leading by example. The last thing I would like to say is indeed that today there is an op-ed by our president, by the executive MD of the IMF, and who's a lady, and also president of the EBRD, so 3 women. And it's just amazing when you look right now at the financial architecture, the public financial architecture, the IMFs, the EBRDs, and so on, and the EIBs, now headed by women. There is such a huge potential for, in fact, much more investment to flow into projects that have a gender lens, where we are not just looking at we're not just looking at whether the company that we invest in has a diverse board, which is of course absolutely critical, or diverse management, but that the use of proceeds goes into a project that in itself has a gender lens, we have looked at from a gender lens perspective, how it impacts women, how it includes women, how it empowers women, the whole gambit.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that and for that work of making that a condition. I think this is the way, making it a condition, and look not only about who is part of the project doing it, but also how it impacts women. That's really great to hear, and that public money is going there because it's our tax money after all, and it's good to know it goes to the right place. Hélène, I'd like to hear also now from you, what is going on in the agriculture sector? And also please feel free, of course, to share some of your other experience also from international organizations.
Yeah, thank you. Well, yes, first of all, it's a real pleasure to be here and to talk about this truly important topic, because today we're at a point where we, as a global community, as a world, are facing major challenges. We're facing a rise, obviously, in the impact of climate change, a rise in conflicts, and a difficulty to be able to attain those sustainable development goals, right? Reducing hunger, reducing poverty. And we have to really take stock of the fact that there are 2 major areas that are missing. One is the opportunity to make sure that women are fully included in these decision-making processes, that women are also leading the way, but are opening the doors for a more inclusive world, and that includes an inclusive economy. And for now, despite the many efforts that are being done, women across the world are still very much left behind when it comes to equal access to education, to technology, to resources. And, and then it's also a question of not looking at this gender issue in a silo, right? We are all interconnected, but the fact that women are left behind means that they don't have access also to healthcare. They don't have access to land rights. They don't have the same types of access that enables them to really be part of this global economy that is needed to be able to attain these sustainable development goals. So, that's what I've seen across the various different continents I've worked, especially across, peacekeeping, peace building, the importance of making sure that we're listening to local realities and giving women a voice, and that it needs to be a bottom-up approach. This is not just about creating conventions. It's not just about global policies, which are important, but it's about making sure that those are brought down to local realities, but also that the voices of women are brought back up. Today, we have an amazing opportunity to do that because we have technology at our fingertips that gives us an opportunity to listen much more widely, to engage in dialogues with women across the globe, and to make sure that those voices are actually captured and turned into qualitative and quantitative data through blockchain technology, through AI. So I think that there is an amazing opportunity for us to move forward. And then let's take just a very quick look at rural populations. We have been talking about more and more the importance of addressing the food systems gap, right? And this food systems challenge. Our rural populations, our farmers actually really matter. And why do they matter so much? Because you eat every day. We all eat every day, and we kind of forget the fact that where does this food come from? Our rural populations feed a third of the planet. 80% of the world's poorest people and most of the hungry live in developing areas and depend on small-scale agriculture. In Africa alone, 1 person in 5 doesn't get enough to eat. And climate change and conflict threaten to make the situation worse. So we need everyone to participate. And that means we also need the women to be able to participate. 1.7 billion women in the rural world, March 8th, are celebrating today the rights of women, all women, right? And so we need to look at these 1.7 billion women, 1/5 of humanity, who live in rural areas of developing countries. They're facing unspeakable difficulties, but we hear little about them. They represent 40% of the agricultural workforce in developing countries. And this percentage varies, right? From 20% in Latin America, 50% in some regions. I know we're going to get into more details, so I'll stop it there. But the situation of these women is hardly improving. And we need to make sure that we shift the balance. When a man earns $1, a woman earns 82 cents for the same work in rural areas. And so we'll get into more details on what can be done.
But then thank you for mentioning this. And as you say, we eat every day, and agriculture is so important. And let's just at this very moment send our blessings to all the women who are not seen, not heard, and maybe not even counted for in any statistics at all, and that are working here. And let's make sure we see them. And I thank you very much for mentioning that right now. Kanta, are you with us now? Kanta, yes. So calling in from one of the largest, I don't want to say market or economy, I would say largest countries on the planet, because the other day someone said to me, Kristin, you have to look at women because it's a great market opportunity, women's health. And I thought, no, I want to be taken seriously, not because I'm a market. I want to be taken seriously because I'm a great woman and because we are all great women. And we may also be a market, but that's not the only reason we want to be taken seriously. So Kanta, please share what's happening in India and what's being done to invest in women and in view of what you have heard also. And welcome.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kristin. Thank you for inviting me. I want to wish everyone a happy International Women's Day. And I'm really privileged to be here with all the great speakers and panelists. And yes, if you don't represent India in these forums, then you are not doing justice to the world and not doing justice to women in the world. Right? So yes, thank you for asking me to be here. It's great time to be in India, I would say. Actually, I always say that it's great time to be born a girl. Times were never better than this. And why I say that? Of course, if you start counting the challenges, there are so many of them that we can continue to bury ourselves deep into those troubles. But if you start looking up, keep your neck up and see what else is happening here. And India is rising, Kristin, and so are the women.
And so are the
I
women.
see in front of my own eyes how things have changed for all of us. So I also want to start with women of this country and the globe who have fought for all of us to be here today and who have made it possible for us to speak about us. Otherwise, men were talking about us without us, right? And now we are there because it has been made possible by the previous generations and also our parents and also each other. I won't be speaking if you are not there, Kristin.
Yeah.
Because we have made it possible for each other.
Yeah.
So in India, a couple of things that I wanted to highlight. And now, since we're talking about investing in women, I think we need to talk about getting more inclusive societies discussion center stage. Men cannot run the world for the longest time. You were at COP and you saw these men in black suits and green ties and telling us what climate change is and what will happen if this is not stopped. And I'm saying, who does it impact more? Right, women and children. And are we having enough women in the room to discuss the impact of climate change on their lives? Women in agriculture and the problems that they face because of climate change. So we need to look at a very inclusive ecosystem, including leadership roles. So that's one point that I wanted to make. And I think time has come where we don't hesitate to say, do I know about it? Do I not know about it? We all know about these things, and we need to talk about those things. So that's number one. Investment in women's leadership. It will not come naturally that because we have been deprived of all these opportunities. We were kept out of science. We were kept out of finances. We were kept out of saying, this is not a rocket science. And I'm saying in India, all the women are running the rocket. The ISRO is being run by women. Point here is, who are we talking about here? Women are doing everything as far as space is concerned in India. We also need to bring in different kinds of instruments or financing models for women. One kind of public finance or private finance will not work. We have to bring in more blended models of finance to invest for gender equality. I think we also, and my previous speaker also spoke about that, we need to invest in the green economy, green and clean economy. And that also means involvement of women in those kind of sectors. And the last thought, and of course, there are multiple barriers, but I think one of the key barriers is the care work that women have to do, and most of it is unpaid. But how do women benefit from this care economy that we are talking about every day? I think the last thought, do we invest in women change makers, women who are shaping the world, women who have a voice, women who are heard, women who really are making that change possible. So how do we continue to invest in young voices so that they know what needs to change and how do they make that happen? So with those thoughts, I will stop here and I have to go somewhere. I'm really sorry. I have a hard stop because I'm in a valedictory function in a university.
Kanta,
the students.
Can I catch you on one thing?
Yes.
I mean,
sure.
we know also, and you know yourself from being an activist or a trailblazer on this topic for so long, there are also obstacles. So how do you personally overcome those obstacles? Can you say one sentence on that? And then we let you go.
The story is very filmy, right? When you don't realize how you have come from being a student and a sports person to where I am today, I think it sounds very, very, very filmy story. But I think one thing that has made all the difference in my life is continuous learning, and also probably sports played a great role in my life. And along with many other things that work for all of us, And of course, many things don't work, but I think not giving up.
Not giving up. Yeah. Kanta, thank you so much. And one thing maybe I need to share about her to everybody. She's such a sister also. She's such a collaborative person, such a kind. And I think that's also the root of her success, how she engages people, brings them up, lifts them up, and brings people around a cup of chai or something everywhere. Kanta, that's you. Thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you. And I'm really sorry. I have to rush. I would have loved to stand here, everyone, but today is not that day.
Yeah, here's the Happy Women's Day. Thank you for all your efforts, all through everything you do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy India Day. So now, Leah, we want, or not India, Leah, we want to hear also from you now. What is happening in your world, and share so enthusiastically you shared with me the other day also what you're doing to start something for women.
Thank you, Kristin, and a happy International Women's Day to all the women here and around the world. And I want to also echo what Kanta said. You know, if India is not on the call, you know, we are missing a huge component of the women entrepreneurs. But I also want to add that for every 4 women entrepreneurs, 1 will start a business in Africa. Okay, so we mean that 25.9% of the female adult population in Africa, 1 in every 4 will start a business. So we have the highest number of women entrepreneurs in the African continent. Happy to represent their voices and happy to do the work we are doing at Tanir International and the Tanir Group. And we are mainly focused around advancing financial inclusion with a gender and climate lens. Because when we look at financial exclusion and climate risks, they go hand in hand, okay? So there is no conversation around climate that will not have financial inclusion as a cornerstone. So we are really happy to be here and to champion for inclusive financial systems. I know I'll have more opportunities to speak to this, but I'm really honored to be on the call. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and you know, I want to have you continue to ask your question, because we had a discussion the other day, and since we are talking about investing in women and accelerating progress, we talked also about, Leah and me talked a bit about how often, despite efforts we heard from European Investment Bank and so on, it's not always that easy to get the loans, you know, or you get the loans when you don't need them actually. Like we know also sometimes when you have money, maybe they give you money, but if you don't, it's not always that easy. And I think, Leah, also you have experienced sometimes that, and you had this great idea of actually a bank for women. Can you share a bit about your ideas around this and your big dream and why and how? Thank you.
Thank you, Kristin. And I want to paint this picture because I am reflecting on my lived experiences and of those of women around us and even men, and looking at how the financial system is construed. And you wonder who gets this service if you can't access them, okay? And my experience from a bank, a traditional formal institution, is that I haven't been able to get a credit facility. And that got me asking the hard question, then who does get these facilities? I thought I'm employed, you know, you have a good job, you have a good contract, you know, you have pay slips, you have already assessed yourself against their 5 C's of credits. But at the end of the day, you still don't take that check home. So we are trying to change the narrative. And while we might do so much around advocating, field building, we also want to be at the table where capital is being allocated. So, and one of the ways, in my own perspective and in my own vision, is to also be a capital allocator. And that's why we have a huge vision to own a bank in the next decade, where every woman, every man can walk in and feel heard, respected, you know, feel that they can get a service. So that is why we are so big on this. We use 4 vehicles, 4 companies. We've registered 4 companies. And the way we drive financial inclusion is 1 company is focused on credits. So we are looking at how then do we play in the regulated space, because when you go to a traditional bank to access a facility, the way they assess you, character then becomes one of the ways they look at it. And character is in terms of your credit score. Okay, how are you faring on? Who are you exactly as a borrower? And if you look at women, and most of them borrow from table banking, you know, borrow their friends, that information is not trickling back into the financial system because these are not regulated entities. So until you borrow from a regulated entity and you repay your loan, that information only stays with the entity where you borrowed. So we need these kinds of information to flow back, because more and more loans are being priced according to risk, and there is a high perception of women being risky. So if they are still borrowing from models that are not feeding into the normal regulatory system, then when will they ever get out of this hole? Okay, so one of the ways we had thought about it is how can we play in the digital financial space, but still as a regulated entity, so that we help these women build a credit score and in return build one of the C's of credit, which is character.
Yeah.
The other arm that we were looking at is the place of technology in lending. In the next decade, it will be so hard to get to access financing if there are no data points that speak to what you do. So how are we preparing these informal businesses that we are talking about to be able to have data points that can address growth, that can tell us how big is the business, how much should we be lending, how is their revenue model? So technology then becomes a key enabler in that space. So we have a technology arm. The third one, we have an insurance arm, because no matter how you look at it, you will only need, for you to build resilience, you have to find ways of managing risk. And the thing about risk management, you can avoid it, you can mitigate, but still we also want them to be able to transfer some of those risks through adopting inclusive micro insurance policies that they can afford. So that space then is somewhere we want to play and understand what are the dynamics, why aren't we serving this market right? So that in the future, we can also have a brokerage arm where we are able to represent these kinds of buyers, where we are able to bring them together and, you know, get a policy that's able to serve them. The other arm is now where you look at some of the people who need mentorship, technical assistance the most are not able to afford the price to pay for these kinds of experts, these kinds of consultants. Then how do we drive this kind of growth, accelerate these businesses to be ready, to be investor ready? Because when you ask impact venture capitalists why they are not investing in women, they will tell you, oh, there is no the businesses are not investor ready. So how are we preparing these businesses to be investor ready? So one of the ways is to use financial instruments such as grants. So that then we drive through our nonprofit arm. We look at how do we accelerate these businesses to be investor ready. So conclusively, all of them, they build a pipeline for each other, because if we make you investor ready, if X investor is not willing to look at you, then Tanir Credit can look at you, okay? So you still need to be able to have a card on the table. So that's why we have a huge vision. I am so committed to it. It's the one thing I breathe every day when I wake up. That's the one thing I'm thinking about.
It's so, I mean, you covered now some of the obstacles and the solutions, and it's very, very exciting. And I would like to go now to ask Shiva, because you also mentioned before bringing people in the pipeline, and also what are not only obstacles, but what are some solutions in what we have talked about and what you hear from Leah now, Shiva.
No, excellent. And indeed, thanks a lot, Leah, for highlighting really that holistic approach that is required. Perhaps I sort of bring it to something we did in Europe, but ultimately when, you know, the issues, so maybe one thing we should also just dismiss is the notion that Europe, you know, we have sort of nailed the problem. The problem is sort of in other countries, in emerging, you know, potentially less developed countries in Europe and in the US. We did a study a few years ago, only basically around 2% of all venture capital goes to women-led companies. The reality and this is in Europe, in the US, in very developed countries. What this means is that even though roughly a quarter to a third of actually such companies being women-led, there's a huge gap. This gap really is setting us back. And it is very often also important to understand that it's not just a moral issue, but it's also that the gender bias actually is keeping society away from some of the really important innovations. I highly recommend a book that I recently read by Catherine Marshall. I hope I got her name pronounced correctly. It's called Mother of Invention. And there's just quickly the story of Mr. and Mrs. Ford. I mean, so the famous Ford with the assembly line. Mrs. Ford was driving already an EV, but because electrical vehicle cars were seen for women, they had a roof and, they were like sort of drawing rooms on a wheel. Mr. Ford, who was, of course, driving the very macho combustion engine car, the society back 100 years ago saw EVs as a woman car. And of course, you're not going to mass market that car. So just imagine hundreds of billions of CO2 emissions later, and it takes, I guess, Elon Musk to then realize perhaps, it's not that EVs are for women only, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about this gender bias to keep society away from tackling its most pressing issues. And therefore, what I would like to generally highlight is to also the points that Leah made. It's about, on the one hand, ensuring that we have the right, the right instruments, the very often also the awareness of women entrepreneurs where the money is, and the public sector, multilaterals, very important role in that. Having the right instruments, having the right support mechanism. In fact, the technical assistance, the advisor needs to be fully accessible.
Yes.
But then there is also the notion of having more women in key investment decision roles to control the checkbook. And this is where we're also putting a lot of emphasis now through our subsidiary, the European Investment Fund, but also in the non-EU context when we invest in funds, to ensure that we invest in entities where you have women, not just, very often you need to look very carefully. They are not in sort of support positions, in senior support positions, the pink ghettos very often, but they really are controlling the checkbook, because study after study has shown that when women make investment decisions, then they make them, in more socially responsible areas. They look at the whole CO2 emissions. We have really data that shows the correlation of women's investment power and actually tackling some of our issues. So in a way, it's not just fix the women, it's fix the system and fix the financial system, as Leah is saying. Absolutely, we need to change that along.
Yeah, thank you, Shiva. I mean, this is so important, and also that you have your sister organization with the fund, but with this innovation coming from Leah, like how do we get those points? How do we, if you are being in the non-visible economy, so to speak? And Hélène, please, I think you are working on this, and you have many examples seeing this every day. Can you share some of the solutions, overcoming the many obstacles, please? Thank you.
Sure. No, I think the financial inclusion aspect is fundamental. And as Leah pointed out, as Shiva just pointed out, the tools are there to be able to redress the bar, but it needs to be understood at how difficult it is still for women to have access to decision-making, have access to funding. But, achieving gender equality in this space is unique and complex, and it requires far-reaching changes in the legal sphere, in public policy, in the organization of economic activities, and in social norms that are deeply rooted in mentalities. If we transfer what we've just been talking about, again, back to this agricultural productivity gap that we work on so much, and the wage gap between women and men, if we were able to close that gap, we would increase the global GDP by 1%. That's that's nearly $1,000 billion. And these gains would translate into a 2-point reduction in food insecurity. In concrete terms, that would mean 45 million people, a far cry from the current situation, right? And we need to understand that right now, more than half of bilateral funding for agriculture and development, for instance, already integrate gender issues. However, right now, we're still at a very much tick the box exercise, right? But the actual delivery, implementation, and whether those gender issues make sense to the local contexts, I think that there's still a real strong gap. And so on closer examination, only 6% of that funding goes to projects where this issue is fundamental. So we need to do more and we need to do better. And we need to implement on a much larger scale local interventions that have worked so well in reducing inequalities in rural areas. And so I want to just 2 minutes give you a very quick example of one of the probably most empowering areas or projects that I was part of, where when I was in Colombia, where we were looking at a particular community in Tumaco at the border between Colombia and Ecuador, where gender-based violence was increasing tremendously. And the community that was a rural community was having a very hard time feeding itself and feeding its community and participating in the economy because of the impact of climate change. And so they could no longer grow the food that they were accustomed to grow. But at the same time, there had been the disarmament process of the FARC. Therefore, they were no longer also supplying the coca to the FARC, and they were not receiving stipends from that. And it was very much linked to also the coming out of conflict, but the domino effect that this was having on this community. And so there was a particular effort through blended financing and through many efforts to listen to what they were going through and getting a blended financing mechanism with multilateral investment, with municipal investment, with private sector, to go in there and to train these women in particular to be able to shift their production to cocoa, or to cacao rather. And at the same time, we were able to get them to speak about their own pathway, right? So they had access to microphones, to cameras, and they were given a particular challenge to document through their own storytelling the evolution of their training to be able to then start growing cacao. And this took several years. But what was amazing is that they then shifted their agriculture. They were empowered to be the leaders in this change. And 3 years later, the gender-based violence had gone down by 70%. They were not only able to feed themselves and feed their children, infant mortality had gone down. And the production became now a production that is internationalized, from not only growing cacao to then the production and the value chain, right? And I'm trying to reduce, of course, this very extensive example, but it's really important to be able to connect the dots, that making sure that women have access to what they need to be able to redress the bar, to participate. It was their idea. They're the ones who led it, and they were able to tell the story. And those are the kinds of innovations and programs that need to be scaled up, because it does matter. And it does matter because it changes their entire lives, their communities' lives, their countries' lives, right? And it improves health, it improves education, it improves the capacity for their children to then grow in a more sustainable way. And so that is what is going to change the needle on sustainable development and strengthening the role of women in society. So it's a micro example, but micro example plus micro example plus micro example means we change the world. So let's make it happen.
Thank you so much for sharing that, and also for bringing up abuse and violence against women, because we know that having the economic independence, economic empowerment gives you freedom. Of course, there is cultural issues and so on, but that freedom to choose is vital. I noticed also in my home country, in Norway, there are a very high level of women working, and actually the OECD countries is amongst the countries with most children being born, and there are lots of single mothers also, and the shame issue is no longer present. So I think that there is something about any country we can learn from each other, this thing of being economic independent, you have freedom to choose, and also the country prosper, or your community and your society. And at the same time, it's not easy. And I see also time is going. So if you can just share, if there's one sentence, one advice you would like to share from your experience in 1 minute only, please do so now. Can I, maybe Hélène, you have one advice or one experience you would like to leave everybody with today?
I think shifting up, gearing up, scaling up together requires greater investment. The funding gap has been quantified. 360 billion US dollars a year would be needed to achieve gender equality in general and women's empowerment, giving them the means in particular, right? And I mean, we would have to wait another 300 years to be able to reach this gender equality, and we can't afford to do that. Our world, it's not just about women, it's our world, cannot afford to do that for the future of our sustainability, for the future of people and planet. So we need to perhaps all work together to make sure that we get over this, what is perceived right now as gender fatigue, because the word gender seems to be tiring people out. And at the same time, we need to come together. That's why it's so wonderful to see, men also on this panel, to be able to, because we need to work together to make sure that this doesn't stop the progress that we have at our fingertips.
Thank you. Working together, that's a key thing, as she said. Shiva, what's one thing you want to share?
I would say, given the theme invest in women, we all, so 40% of global wealth is in women's hands. Now, it may be very unequal because of some billionaires, women, but we all, nevertheless, as to the point of we also micro investors in our daily, even micro, as a consumer. So meaning we should become much more aware of the power we each have, how we invest our own money, both in terms of where it goes when it comes to climate issues, but also action in investing in businesses that are, have a gender lens and have the right diversity approach. So I would say, use your pocketbook.
I use your pocketbook. I know this is so important. Please, everybody, we have power. Use your pocketbook. Leah, one last word from you also.
Let me speak to the wage pay gap, because I always have opportunities to speak around funding gap. And the thing about the equal pay for equal work done is the fact that if a woman is going to earn 20 to 35% less than a man, compound that, maybe she works for 20, 25 years, she will invest less, she will retire with less money, she will have less in times of crisis. So let's look at the compounding effect of some of these gaps, and let's look at it. That could be your daughter, that could be mine, that could be your mom, who will retire without savings because she had to spend all the money on your education, and the one that would have gone to savings, she was not paid. So can we reverse this and flip and look at equal pay for equal work as a key element to resilience and to financial health? Thank you.
Thank you so much. And you mentioned this again. And I think also now we're going into small group, and Hans, you will have questions after. But one of the things I want us to look at now is in the group also. And before we go out, thank you so much, all of you panelists. And please stay with us, and we just have a few minutes in the small groups, because I want us to discuss together, all of us, a component that I believe is very important here, and that is also the value. How do we value other women? We have discovered again and again that the patriarchy resides in women as in men. So often even women themselves will give salaries that are lower to other women than to men. Often women themselves will give, it's not their fault, it's the culture we have been brought up with. And I see it also in our work. Many people, for instance, I get these questions every day. So what do you do, Kristin, during the year? We do an annual huge mega conference. I think if Carl Schwab at Davos, he would never get that question. You see what I mean? I mean, it's not equally big, of course, but still, it's like, you wondered about what's going on here, why they don't see the work, and this is by other women. So I think sometimes we also have to look at ourselves. So as I'm thanking the panelists for all your insight, please stay with us, and then I'd like everybody to go in a small group again for just a few minutes, and then we come back in a few minutes after that again, and we share even more. So please stay, and thank you again. And please take all women's effort seriously, also all the women. I remember Gro Harlem Brundtland, previous Prime Minister of Norway and head of the World Health Organization. She was the first one talking about our common future and the sustainable development. If we had heard her then, just like the electric vehicle story, I mean, some people heard, but not enough. And later came Al Gore, later came everybody, and now we have the COP27, 28, and so on. But there were so many people, so many women who maybe also feel things, sense things before it becomes a statistics. And maybe they are right, or maybe there's something in it. So let's not also always need to have the proven fact. So I know we started this long before UN Women even existed, before many of these millions of initiatives right now, and we knew it. But it was hard in the beginning because many people didn't listen. They didn't see. They thought it was crazy. And it isn't crazy. No, everybody's on the case. So, but there could be something else, which is the new. So never dismiss an idea of a new innovative thing, because all innovations are things that haven't been seen before. So by definition, it will be new and it will be weird for you and it will be different unless you work on yourself and train your mind to be particularly open. And we need people who are open for the new to create the new. And I would like to remind everybody about that and value it and value it and value it. So as you see another woman's work, value her work, because she is another part of you. I am because you are. So all of that is interconnected and it's very complex. And we are in a time now when we really, really have to value both Mother Earth, nature, and each other. And of course, all the amazing men who also often are misjudged and not seen because of their caring and sharing side. It's not only about gender, it's a lot about how we care for planet, each other, and the next generations. So on that note, please keep in touch with WIN, be part of us. We keep having a meeting maybe once a month on different things, but more than anything, we work with many, many other women's associations and networks and groups, and we look forward to having a meeting in Tokyo on the 28th of June, in Kenya on the 23rd of August, and above all, the global conference. We hope to see it happen on the second week of October with all of your support. And again, thank you for your panelists on this morning. Thank you all of you for being part of this. It's been a joy to celebrate this morning for us here in Europe, Women's Day. And yeah, thanks for all your effort. Keep it up and we will be held up. So with that, thank you and good continuation of Women's Day. Bye.